So glad you're here. We finished last week the series we called Comeback, and we've just had tremendous response in all of that. We were so happy, the things that we felt like God was directing us to do, and the results that we believed that we were going to see, we have been experiencing, and that's a wonderful thing. So many people in the last few weeks have just come to Jesus, just gotten things squared away. Others have started to come back in their life, things that they needed to deal with, they needed to jump on, and needed to begin the work of restoration. And we've just seen a lot. And so we're just very grateful for that. I personally am just happy you came back. Yeah, never mind. Yeah, never mind, yeah. Actually, the second service laughed. I'm so disappointed. I do want to just talk to you a little bit about the invitation that has come into your life, whether you're a brand new believer, whether this is all just opened up to you even in the last few weeks in our Comeback series, or if you've been a believer for years. The invitation that I want to talk about this morning that Jesus extended to us, that he put it out there. And it's one of those verses that mean a lot, and it gets repeated, but I want to just break something down this morning. I want to help you in the process of your faith to realize that there's so much that God has invited you into, that it's more than most Christians realize or experience. God has got a lot of good ideas where you're concerned. He's been thinking about you forever. My psalm, I've been reading this last week, is Psalms 139. It's about how God knows me, and how because he knows me, he has planned for me. That it's what he knows is massive. It's beyond my ability to comprehend. But that's what I've been invited into. The world I'm inhabiting, or I've been inhabiting, is not necessarily the world that God intends to leave you in. That he has this tremendous offering that we can come from into. I'm going to talk about that. So I want you to turn with me to Matthew 11, verse 25. That's good. Yeah. The hoots have been good today. All three services, we've had bodacious hoots. It's wonderful. It's great. Yeah. So I want to read the scriptures that lay the groundwork for the scriptures I'm really going to read. And then we're going to talk about. But I want you to understand that Jesus, as always, is contextualizing your life. Your life has context. And he wants that context to center around him and around the truths that on which this entire universe have been built and formed. There's so many people in this day and age who try to create their own realities. They try, if you don't create one, the world will create one for you and offer it to you. And then there's that lie that goes with this reality that says you can actually live in this reality. And you can invite other people to come in and be just as crazy as you are. And it wasn't meant to be like that. God looks at you and he understands you already fit in his plans. He knows who you are. You were not a surprise. I don't care what your parents told you. You were not an accident. And like, God, where'd he come from? He knew you. This is Psalms 139. He knew me. And in the knowing there was preparation. So Jesus is contextualizing this world. Matthew 11:25. At that time, Jesus declared, I thank you, Father, Lord of heaven and earth, that you have hidden these things from the wise and understanding and revealed them to little children. Yes, Father, for such was your gracious will. All things have been handed over to me by my Father, and no one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son. Now, if it stopped right there, if the period was there, it would be quite a story that Jesus has been telling. He has told them that he is in such intimate relationship, such interdependency, and such intercontribution between he and his Father that you can't hardly distinguish the two of them, one from the other. That everything that was the Father's, he's given to Jesus, and everything that was Jesus, was the Son's, was the Father's, and that there was intimacy, and there was power, and there was purpose, and there was never a hint of disagreement or anything. Everything was at peace between the two of them. Now, if that's where it stopped, that would be a tremendous story, wouldn't it? Talk about the God of the universe being in this place. But then Jesus has this addendum, and you come into the picture. And he says, no one knows the Father except the Son, and anyone to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. So suddenly I find myself having been invited into this correspondence, into this fellowship of eternity, the Father revealing the Son revealing the Father, and all of this. And then Jesus adds this thing, and he says, and those that I choose to reveal. And then he's going to tell us how that choosing begins to work. I am invited into this. I'm not going to be left to my own devices for my time here or in eternity. God's got this huge plan of which I am a part, and I have been invited. And in that, I begin to discover I'm going to find out who the Father is, and I'm going to find out who the Son is. I'm going to find out who the Holy Spirit is. I am now invited into that relationship. And then Jesus goes in to these verses that have become very precious to a lot of people. But I want to make sure you understand what it was he was saying to you and to me. The invitation, folks, is huge. He says this, come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. N.T. Wright said, this is a scripture that takes us right to the heart of what it means to be Jesus. This is the heart of the gospel. This is what is happening to you in the invitation to come into this. Now, I want to break this down. We're just going to kind of do it a word at a time, phrase at a time, so you understand. And I get it. I go over it again and again. I've heard this sermon already twice, and I'm like really enjoying it. That's like 3 times. Who knows? First thing Jesus says is come. It's a standard invitation of Jesus. This is how he got his disciples. He walks up to them. They're fishing. They're sitting at a toll booth, sitting at the tax booth, and he says something. I mean, great line, Jesus. Follow me. All right. And that was his invitation. And then he turns around and he walks away. Now, how did they become disciples? They got up and they followed. Whatever they were doing, they left it to go see what it was that this man was offering them. All right? So here's the 2 actions that have to take place when Jesus says come. First of all, Jesus is saying leave the environment that you exist in and enter mine. All right, folks, this is something this is real significant. If you get this, you can go home. Honest. And me too, I go home too. I've heard the sermon twice. He says, come. He's inviting you out of something. All right? How many of you don't have to put your hand up because, we'll know. How many of you need to be invited out of something that's in your life? I need to be called out of it. I can't be there. My mind doesn't work. It's the way I process. It's a pattern of thought that keeps coming back. It's habits. It's into what I think my past, and I can't get out of it. All of us have got things we need to be invited out of, don't we? We've all got them. I have like two. You know, this life, I can't live there. But Jesus never invites you out of anything without inviting you into something else. You got to know this about him. He's not just trying to get you to change your behavior. He's wanting you to walk out of that in order to come into this. Because what he's got for you is better than where you've been. So when he says come, folks, it is one word that is full of all kinds of meaning. See, what we normally do in this process, we meet Jesus. We hear the story of the gospel. And we ask him into our life. We ask him into our existing reality, the place where we live. And we hope, because this is what we've heard, we hope he'll clean it up. And lo and behold, he cleans it up. He starts to fix things. He starts to heal things. He starts to complete things. He comes in. And so we invite him in, hoping he's going to clean it up and make this place that I'm in inhabitable. But then, as my life gets free, I start saying, okay, God, thank you so much. Thank you, Jesus. Now, would you mind just leaving me to my own recognizance? I got it from here. I can take care of this. You got it cleaned up. I got that stuff, got passed. I'm good. And so we put him in this thing and we say, Jesus, if you're needed, if I ever find myself in a position where I need some things straightened out again, I'll get in touch with you. Thank you so much for how much you've done for me. Do any of you recognize that? See, we got those areas in our life. Now, what he says is, no, I'm here to stay. When I said come, I meant come. Leave your environment. Get out of your room, get out of that space in your head, because I want to relieve you of that. I have something better I want to give you. That's the way the gospel works. All right? But it wasn't just into oblivion that he says, leave and come into something. He says, come to me. So now we know to whom it is we have been called. We have been called to a person. Did I give you leave the environment that you exist? Yes, I did. 2, we have an open invitation to a person and a relationship with Jesus. So he's not just inviting me into nothing. He's inviting me into relationship with himself. Where is Jesus' relationship? What do we know from what we read earlier? It's with the Father. So when he invites me in, he's inviting me into the relationship that he has with the Father. This is significant. This is huge. I am now getting to have a part, some role, whatever it may be. I'm having a role now in this thing for which the whole world exists and why it's here. God's heart and intent. I've been invited in. And I get to have a part. I'm invited to be with him. The invitation itself just changes things. But the fact that it's to him, it's not to other things, not to religion, it's not to behavior changes, it's not any of that stuff. I come into relationship with him. And then he says, come to me all. I just wanted that stand by itself so everybody understands that that's all inclusive. Anyone and everyone qualifies. That's why we have no problem telling children about Jesus. That's why we tell anybody and everybody that has any kind of awareness about them at all that Jesus has purpose and means for their lives to belong to him. That's why we do the things that we do around here to introduce people and to grow them, because we know it includes all. We don't get to determine who all is. Used to spend a lot of time with pastors, young pastors. It was one of the roles I played in the vineyard was I oversaw churches, and so I would spend time with these young pastors. And it was always fun for me to be able to tell to them, listen, buddy, as they're complaining to me about church or this or that, and I said, listen, buddy, here's the truth. You don't always get to choose who you get to pastor. A lot of times they come to you because they need you and not because you like them. You need to get over yourself. How many of you are glad salvation works the same way? I mean, if he liked me, I would be in trouble. All are included. It's totally inclusive. And then he says, just so that we know for sure who the all is, he says, all who labor and are heavy laden. Jesus has pretty much entered into the entire human experience here. See, everyone has yokes in their lives. Everyone. Now here's a truth. God created us from the very beginning with a need to bear burdens. There has to be weight in our lives that we're pulling. There has to be something, because this is what gives our lives meaning and direction. People who have no responsibility, people who have nothing going on in their lives, those people are at a loss. We have things in our lives that we get up in the morning. Sometimes it feels like slavery, but we're going to go do it. It gives my life some purpose and direction. I know who I am. We all were created from the very beginning, even before the fall. Does everyone realize that God gave Adam jobs to do? He didn't just say, sit here under the tree, shade. He gave him things to do. He had a life. God intended for him to have life. We were created to have burdens. But when sin began to take over, the burdens began to bury us. We couldn't handle them anymore. We didn't have the capacity. We didn't have the relationship that were going to allow us to walk through this. The whole world is under the laboring and under the heavy laden. We all have yokes in our lives. We were meant to have yokes. It's just we weren't meant to pull the whole thing by ourselves. God always intended to walk with us through this. He always meant. But when sin separated us from him, then the work began. We started thinking somehow we could solve the problems ourselves. Is any of this familiar to you? You're staring. I'm uncomfortable. See, it's very familiar. We think we can do it. We think Jesus is a stick-on. It's like that time your arms are full and you've got a child and you wish I had a third arm. And so Jesus becomes the third arm. I'll use it when I need. It's just hard to find a coat. Jesus is He doesn't want to be your third arm. He wants to be your life. And that's what he's inviting you into. And that's what he's inviting you out of in order to get you into. See, this is a remarkable thing. All that heavy laden. What are the yokes? I mean, you could list your own, but there are yokes. How many of you have ever been under the burden, the yoke of just self-expectations? The stuff you put on yourself that you try to make yourself be, something that you've got to live up to. You think everybody else is watching and that it's important. Let me just help you here. They're not. It's something you throw on yourself. How many of you, though, have been under the burden, under the yoke of other people's expectations? The things that people thought you ought to be. This is how, somehow, if you do it this way, you will make me happy. And that somehow is going to round out my world. How many of you found out it never works? I can never meet everybody's expectations. I don't care. Have you ever been under the yoke of religion? Religion can become a yoke really, really quickly. It can actually become a pretty decent one if you're in link with Jesus. But the Pharisees talked about the yoke of the Torah all the time. They talked about this burden, the weight of the law, and the crushing responsibility of keeping the law and burying people. And Jesus got into it with them one time and said, man, you lay the burdens, you lay the yoke on other people that you won't carry yourself. You bury them, you're killing them. And they called it the yoke of the Torah. The religion often comes in disguise, and sometimes it comes in uniform, but it always beats you up. How many of you have ever been in the yoke of self-indulgence, of self-centeredness, of just letting yourself go? And somehow I deserve this. I ought to have this. And you've watched your life break down. How many of you have been in the yoke of good things that just got overemphasized? And suddenly it began to take pieces out of the rest of your life. It just began to take you down. Yeah. 2 hands. God bless you. See that there's so many places. How about the yoke of control? How many things are really in control? Yeah, but if I could control my environment. I saw this, I listened to this deal about a place somewhere. It was an art exhibit, but where you could go in this room, you get an umbrella, and you can make it rain in this room. And the whole idea is that you get to control the weather. How many things are really under control? But we live this way of us being controlled or trying to control others or trying to control the situations, and it becomes a yoke. It buries us under. How many of you are yoked to your past? How many of you are yoked to a mistake? How many of you are yoked to a memory? How many? On and on and on, human yoke. See, we've all got them. All you who labor and are heavy laden. The work wears us down. 5 says, Jesus, though, doesn't leave us there. He doesn't just acknowledge, and boy, wouldn't that be a depressing sermon. Sorry. Sorry about your yoke. Jesus said, you come unto me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and then he says, I will give you rest. If you go someplace else other than him, you can't be real dependent on getting rest. The rest is an idea. It's a Hebrew idea. It's that word shalom. Are you familiar with that word? It's a great word. It's a huge word. It's not just, hey, hi, shalom when you come, and shalom, goodbye. It's a status of life. It's a place. It's a huge word because it's inviting you into this place where my life begins to represent the completeness that it ought to have, the wholeness, its health, its peace, it's the welfare. I'm in good shape. It's safety. I mean, how many of you want to be safe? I talk with couples all the time, and you can hear in conversations sometimes the way that they are addressing an issue, that one of them does not feel safe in this, that if they go too far, they're going to pay a price. And it goes on and on, the safety. Shalom is safe. Because I am safe in these conversations. I'm safe. There's soundness, there's tranquility, there's prosperity. It's a big word. Perfection, fullness, rest, harmony, and the absence of agitation and discord. So when Jesus says, I will give you rest, what he's saying is, I'm inviting you into shalom. How many of you think that Jesus is kind of okay in his own skin? You think he's at rest with himself? Is he at rest with the Father? Or you think there's agitation? You think maybe there's something between the two of them? He's already established that that's not the case, hasn't he? I read that to you. We are in harmony with one another, complete harmony, and you've been invited in. So when you do come in, when you do walk away and you do embrace this, the harmony that was his starts to become yours. I will give you rest. My mental state, my physical state in a lot of situations has begun to change. The source of my peace is no longer the proper control of my environment. All right? But it is trust in the one who invited me into his world. This is huge. It's no longer dependent on how you treat me and what you say to me and whether I like you or you don't like me. It's none of that anymore. It is at the core, which Jesus gets to here in a moment, but at the core of my being, I am sure of who I am. I become comfortable, not just in my skin. I'll give you rest. Rest is the transformation that begins when we enter Christ's environment and we leave our own behind. This is a reality, folks. And then he says, take. It's the second thing he tells us to do. First he says, come. There's the verb, the invitation. And then he says, take. We got to get a grasp on this. Anyone can be as connected to God as they allow. It's kind of up to you. There's this version of grace that I don't like it. I've heard it preached. This thing that grace is sort of a neutral condition that you come to Jesus, and by grace we are saved. There's something good. I can't earn it. That's what the scripture says. I can't earn this thing. By grace you're saved, not by works. So once I have the grace applied to my life, I can set down because there's nothing more to do. It's all kind of over. I'm going to heaven. My past is forgiven. I'm in a really good place here. And so I'm just going to skate. We're going to land this big plane one of these days. I'm going to be with my family and friends, and it's all going to be over and wonderful. And if that's all there was to it, then what's the point of Jesus inviting me into a world where things actually change for me? And not only do they change for me, but they begin to change for those around me. Did your salvation make a difference to anybody else in your life? Yeah, it was better, wasn't it? People, like someone sharing with me recently who came to the Lord, and they have responsibility and in a job, and even the people that are working with them are coming to them saying, hey, what happened to you? You're not the same person. Well, you didn't try to change, but with Jesus in the house, I'm telling you, the atmosphere is different. Jesus has invited you into this. He said, take this yoke. It's for you. You have to take it. You have to take responsibility for the fact that I gave it to you. Lynn and I were looking here recently. Someone had given us a card, a gift card to a restaurant. And we thought, well, that'd be it's a nice restaurant here in town. We put the card away so we wouldn't lose it. Well, we lost it. We have no idea how safe we had made it. And so we've been tearing the house up. I have a gift card somewhere and a meal waiting for me, and I can't find the gift card. Grace kind of works like that. If I take the attitude that I've got the gift card, well, you might as well just eat the card because you're not going to get any benefit out of it. I have to take that card and I have to drive myself to the restaurant. First, I got to find it. And then I have to take myself to the restaurant and I exchange that for my meal. This is kind of the idea of Jesus saying, take it. Take it. Would you just take it? Why do you keep insisting that you can do this on your own? Why do you keep believing that somehow I saved you so that somehow you'd just be a little better at getting along with people? I want to be in your life. I want to be your life. I want you to be in yoke with me and not all that other stuff. I got to find that card before it goes away. See, you've got to take it. That's your responsibility. Grace requires that you take it. Otherwise, it just sits there and stews. Grace has power. Grace has motion. Grace has promise. Grace has future. Grace has healing. Take it. Take it. He's offered it to you. He says, take my yoke upon you. Okay, okay, this is it. There's a yoke involved. See, remember what I told you? We've been created to bear burdens. We just haven't been created to bear the burdens we bear. You with me? We've been created to bear whatever comes our way with Him. That's the way it's always meant to be. See, this whole thing of bearing burdens is a picture of the animal, the beast of burden. That he was born for that. And so you pile things on him. But the picture here that Jesus is trying to alleviate, trying to set us free from, is the animal that has had too much put on his back. More weight than he ever intended. And he's stumbling under the load. See, that's you, that's me. He never intended for you to carry the whole thing by yourself, ever. He said, take my yoke and put it on you. That's what you're supposed to take. This whole thing, the burdens that you bear, you're going to do it. The yoke that you have shouldered can be exchanged for God's more excellent will. You got it? You can exchange it. You're going to bear some burdens. You got things to carry. There's weights. There are wonderful things in this world that life would be lousy without some of the burdens that we carry, the burdens of friendship, the burdens of family, the burdens of responsibility, those things that help me know who I am. They have power. But if I try to do it on my own strength, folks, I will never know. I will never know who I really am. Only doing it with Him. See, this is the picture. This is the way it worked. I think I've talked about this before, but the old ox, been around for years. He's strong, dependable. He's obedient. He knows what he's there to do. And there's the new ox, the young one. He's full of enthusiasm. He's strong, but he hasn't got a clue what it is. And they would take the yoke and they would put the young ox to the new ox. And as they're moving through the fields in this steady pace that would be set by the stronger of the two, the young one would push and he would pull and he would back up and he would stop. But the other one just kept moving and moving and moving. There's a great book written by Eugene Peterson. And I love the title. The title is A Long Obedience in the Same Direction. That's being yoked. That's being tied. I'm going to carry, but if I carry it with him, it takes on a whole new meaning. It's not just me trying to get through this. This is me linked to the one who loves me more than anyone else, inviting me into this world where problems get solved, where lives get changed, where God shows himself out of eternity into my moment. See, He's invited, he says, put my yoke. There's another little hint here that you can't wear two yokes at the same time. You're going to be yoked to the old guy, the old ox, and learn from him, or you're going to be tied to this other thing, and it's going to take you wherever in the world it pleases. Jesus goes on and says, take the yoke upon me and learn of me. I am in need of re-education. This is a learning experience. It's a learning situation. I don't know what I need to know. I'm not equipped. I'm not qualified. I'm not informed enough to live in this new environment I've been invited into. The old tools, the way the things I used to use to solve my problems and to get along. The way I used to maneuver life and to manipulate and control. Those old tools don't work in the new kingdom anymore, do they? Do they? No, they don't. They don't work, but you keep trying to use them, you knothead. You keep thinking that somehow if I'll just do this a little harder. What he's saying here when he says, learn of me, he's saying, listen, I got to teach you how to live in this new kingdom. There's new tools. There's a whole new set of things that I want to teach you that you don't know a thing about. And much of your old stuff just won't fly. So he says, I'll teach you. In yoke with me, I will teach you. I will teach you. And what do you learn? You learn Jesus. The things that are on his heart become the things of your heart. The way that he solves a problem become the way that you begin to solve a problem. The way that you maintain a relationship are the ways that he maintains a relationship. Things begin to change because the yoke has changed. The whole meaning of my life and purpose has begun to change. And the old tools, folks, you can discard them. The anger that used to get you what it got you won't work in here. Manipulation won't work. Depending on your hurt feelings and these things that make you self-satisfied, folks, not going to do it. It won't work. In this kingdom is love, joy, peace, gentleness, kindness. There's no law against that. And this is where it's created. With him, in yoke. He says, learn from me. Gentlemen, I'm going to say this right now. Guys, sometimes we're the worst. We're the ones who really think we're insisting we know how this is done. This week, in fact, today I think is your last opportunity to sign up. This week, the end of this week is the men's encounter at Lake Tahoe. This whole thing, that whole deal is about re-education. It's about rethinking and having new tools to care for my family, to be a man of God in the church, to be a dad to my kids, to get things straight and get things squared away and not be who I've been. That whole thing. And guys, if you haven't signed up, you need to go take a real hard look at that. I think today's the last day, and I think there's a handful of positions open. This is that whole re-education. It's why we want you to be in home groups. It's why we want you to be in these places, because you need this new set of tools to live in this new kingdom. The old stuff won't buy it. It won't function. Don't bring it in here. That was intense. He says, for I, and he gives the reasons for why he can say you can come with yoke and you can learn from me. You will learn from me. You will get the tools you need. Why? He says, this is a great explanation. He says, for I am gentle and lowly in heart. What? I thought we had to be strong and, these leaders and take that bull by the horns and we get it done. Jesus says, no, you know what happens when you yoke to me? You start looking like me. You start to walk like me. You start to move at the same pace I move at, but you get the job done with me. At the end of the day, the field is plowed, and we did it together. You didn't do it by yourself. He said, I'm gentle. He's talking about what I'm going to learn and how. See, Jesus intends to transform me. My psalm I've been reading most every day this last week was from Psalms 139. I love this psalm. But it starts out like this. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You discern my thoughts from afar. You search out my path and my lying down and are acquainted in all my ways. What's that got to do with the yoke? This is it. See, he knows you better than you know yourself. He knows what you're here for. He knows what you can handle. He knows who's going to be in your life. He knows how it's going to come down the pike for you. He understands all of that, and he wants in this lowliness and this humility of heart and mind, there's something productive that begins to change you into what he conceives you to be. I'm changed in his world. I'm changed to look like him. I began to reproduce the fruit of the kingdom of heaven. I began to reproduce the fruit of the Spirit of God. And it's not an accident. It is coming in this communion. Jesus is gentle and lowly of heart. He's humble. That word humble is a great word. It's from a Latin word that comes to us in English as humus. How many gardeners do we have? Yeah. How many gardeners would like to have humus in your backyard? See, in Nevada, we are very short of humus. We have a lot of dirt, but we have very little dirt that actually has the organic material in it that's broken down that really supports healthy life. We have to do that ourselves. We have to add that to the soil. We have to build it up. When the word humble comes from that word humus, it's not just dirt. It's a special kind of dirt. It's a productive dirt. It is full of organisms and full of life, and it is able to give that life to anything that is planted in it. And when Jesus is saying he's lowly, he said, I'm humble. You're going to get from me what the plant needs. You get it? Humus. I need it in my life. I need it. And what's the results of that? After the transformation? Well, he says, then you will find rest. You can't help it. This is where it's going to go. It's like the psalmist saying, surely goodness and mercy is going to follow you all the days of your life. And you'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Oh, that's great. It's just starting to happen. It's starting to be. I'm starting to be changed. I have friends, I lots of friends. A couple of friends. My wife really likes me. But I have friends in ministry that they're getting done. I get it. Been in ministry for a lot of years, and I understand. I get that. Linda and I were on vacation here not long in Florida, and we're sitting there on the beach, and I'm wondering, is this what retirement's like? As I look out at this great expanse, and if I want to, I can go stand in the warm water. If I don't have to. Is that retirement? But as I think about that, I'm start thinking, God, you'd have to really be done with me for this. I got my friends that they're finished, and I understand. It'd be okay. But there's more, and there's more, and more. I am not in harness with myself. I'm not in harness with my job. I'm in harness with Jesus, and until he stops walking, I guess I'm going to have to keep going. Keep moving. But in that, I find myself more and more as the ox grows and matures, he gets stronger and more mature. He understands what the farmer wants. And suddenly we find ourselves doing this. See, he said, I'll find rest. I'm no longer forced to operate under my own strength, nor am I limited to my own understanding. So, Proverbs 3, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make straight your paths. That's the promise. But he says, for your souls, the rest will be for your souls. See, in his care, I am secure from the very core of my being. How many of you, this is just human. But how many of you would like to just be at rest, the kind of rest we're talking about, shalom, at peace with the world? And see, what Jesus is saying about this is that what we try to do is we try to handle everything out here. It's external. And so we try to control all of the situations and the conversations we avoid. You ever avoid people? Are they in this room? Am I one of them? Yeah. When we were in Yarrington, it was tough to avoid people because there was like one grocery store. And so if there's somebody you don't want to see, you're going to see them. Sooner or later, you're going to see them. You're going to run into them. And the avoidance thing is like you're hiding there, among the cat food and pretending like you got a cat and hoping that they don't see you. So you avoid. But where'd I get on that from? I don't know. See, there's this thing in us that wants to control peace. We want peace, everything to be its external. I want everything to be as I want it to be. But what Jesus says, you'll find rest for your what? For your soul. So what he's saying is, peace begins somewhere here. It's a place where I have become, I am at peace with God. I'm at peace with my relationship with him. I'm at peace with my place in the world. I'm at peace with my past. I'm at peace because I am in yoke with him. And he says, you'll find rest. Where do you find rest? In your soul. How many of you think it would be a more peaceful world if I had peace at the core of where I live? So that whatever did come down the pike, I had a place to dip. I had a place to draw from the strength that I needed, and it came from the other ox. You think you like this? You like the way you handle problems? I got it from him. I caught it from Jesus. I learned it by being in yoke with him. Peace for your soul. And then he finally says this, just to put you at rest, peace. He says, for my yoke is easy. Whatever yoke Jesus chooses for me, it can be handled because I bear it with him. And finally, my burden is light. Jesus his burden, my burden, his burden is light because he handles it. You got that? That's what makes it light. I've handled more now than I've handled years ago. I can handle more now than I did years ago. Not that I want to handle more than I did years ago, but I'm capable because I learned somewhere that I'm not doing this by myself anymore. There's one who's doing this with me. He's done it before me, a lot stronger than I am, and he's smarter. And the burdens that he begins to place on my life begin to mean something. They're not some of the places where I used to waste my time and energy with these other burdens and other things that didn't mean anything. My burdens now have eternal reason, eternal purpose. And so there's something coming out of my life. It's a wonderful thing to realize. That when I began bearing the burdens, when I began letting him bear the burdens with me, that the capacity for bearing burdens began to grow. But it's not just to carry my own stuff anymore. What begins to happen? I begin to carry the stuff that's on his heart, that's on his mind, and I begin to carry it for other people. In fact, I know people who are much more concerned about others than they are about their own condition because they've already learned their condition's taken care of by the one who loves them. And so it makes room for them to begin to care about other people who don't know that little truth anymore or yet or have forgotten. And so I start becoming one who bears burdens. The yoke that's on me has to do with you. It has to do with someone that's on my heart, that's on my mind, because that's who's on Jesus' mind. That's who's on his heart. And now I carry with him the weight. This is why we encourage you to pray. It's why we encourage you to read your Bibles, why we encourage you to be in relationship by being in your home groups, the life groups, and having your kids in places where they're going to hear about Jesus, and those things, because we want this world that we pastor to be full of people that are in yoke with Jesus. Nothing else makes any sense, does it? I could do this ourselves. I would have quit a long time ago. It's a stupid job. But with Jesus, it makes sense. It makes my life make sense. It makes my past make sense. It makes my future make sense. I'm not doing this alone. Father, thank you that you called me into relationship, that you didn't just tell me about how wonderful it was to be with the Father, but Lord, you invited me in. But in order for that to happen, Lord, I have to be in yoke with you. In order for me to get that, I have to be tied to you in all the things in my life. I thank you, Lord, as I look around. We're all burden bearers, every last one of us, and that's never going to change in this life. But that I can bear this with you, Lord, I think that's the best news you could give me. I don't have to do this all by myself. I don't have to use the old tools. I don't have to have the old framework. I can do this with you. Bless you, Jesus. Thank you for what you did for me. Now, Lord, let me grow and become one that you can trust with the burden of this life. I want my burdens to mean something. I want them to bear fruit. And so I give myself to you, Lord, again in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Honestly, I didn't really want to go to the encounter when I heard about it. I've been to retreats and men's retreats and felt like I'd been there, done that, and honestly was talked into it by my father-in-law. Sitting on the bus on the way up with all the other men, I was sitting next to Andres, and we were just talking about how we had so much more stuff to do. We were so busy, we didn't have time for this, and just whining basically. And I remember us saying we committed to each other not to scream freedom, because it was kind of like this thing that they did all weekend, and kind of like our war cry, and we committed in our hearts not to do it the whole weekend because we were those guys. As we started engaging in this encounter, when we showed up at the camp, that rebellious spirit kind of started to fall off of us, and we started engaging more. And after the weekend was over, we had an opportunity to address the men, and I honestly was glad that I had gone, and it was just a great opportunity to work through some things that you just don't have an opportunity to work through in your busy life and in your family. I would definitely recommend this for any guy who's trying to break through, trying to make a comeback, if you will, and that just wants to experience some freedom from their past, from just stuff, just life that gets on you. And I would fully recommend you going, taking a risk, even though you don't know what's going to happen because they're intentionally vague about it. Just trust that these guys love you and want what's best for you and want you to thrive. I am Jeff Gale, and I went to the men's encounter.